If you're a dad and you're going through parental alienation, meaning the mother is sabotaging your relationship with your son, your daughter, or your sons and daughters, you need to be able to stop it. You need to be able to stop it legally. You need to be able to combat it emotionally with your kids. And you need to do a lot of the right things as a father. So first and foremost, this is going to cause tremendous damage to your children. If it's starting now, we have to stop it immediately. Just like we need to stop physical abuse immediately or sexual abuse immediately, we need to stop parental alienation immediately. However, the criminal justice system, the courts, family law, and so on recognize that abuse is bad for a child, but sometimes, it depends on the state and county you're in, they do not recognize parental alienation as a form of abuse. So although it might be seen as abuse by society, it might be seen as abuse to you, you might know it's abuse, you might know it's damaging your children, you may not be able to go through the courts in the way that you want in order to get that. And first and foremost, we need to understand that the first step to this is going to be parenting time. The more you can up that, the more you can combat it. So let's go back a little bit and talk about what kind of damage this causes. Parental alienation is so important to stop because it guarantees the equivalent, and with some variations, but the equivalent of long-term physical abuse, long-term sexual abuse, and it is a form of child abuse, meaning that if your kid was hit repeatedly by a parent or abused in some horrible way that we don't even want to think of, if they had that for a long period of time, they would start having many of the traits that a child has who's being parentally alienated, meaning that a parent is making that child pick sides, parenting time is being sabotaged, false claims are being made, one parent is vilified more than the other. There's all sorts of documentation on this, and it's published, it's recognized. However, your family justice system may not recognize it, which is terrible. And so we have to understand that this is so important to stop because it's going to affect how our kid's going to have relationships, how our child is going to be able to see themselves, have an identity. They're going to have way higher percentages of depression, addiction, self-harm, suicidal thinking, suicide, all these different things. And what I would even say is, as our culture gets more and more complicated, there's going to be more ways that child, your child, when it becomes an adult, is going to have massive problems that we cannot predict. So the problems that we can predict now in our current society that we see from generations of children who have been alienated by one parent to another, the psychological damage is huge, and we can prevent that. Now, of course, we want the courts to recognize that. Of course, we could be mad about that. Of course, we could see the injustice in that. But what do we do legally to fight this if our court, our county, doesn't recognize it as a form of abuse? The family court system in many counties does not see this as a form of abuse, and they feel that it's brought up too many times. And it might be by hysterical parents and whatever, and parents that are disorganized in the courtroom. That's why I teach guys so much on how to be more organized in your court case and present yourself properly in front of a judge, present yourself properly with the types of evidence that you have and all these different things, and fight your case to win it rather than cause a bunch of drama in the courts. And that can be hard, and that's a discussion for a whole bunch of different other videos. Please watch them. They're good. Now, when we get into this, if the courts don't recognize parental alienation as something to be ruled upon, they think it's a waste of time, it bothers them for whatever reasons, once again, we can see that as unjust, but what is the main thing that's going to combat this? The number one thing, to combat parental alienation is parenting time, to get more parenting time and to make the most out of that parenting time. So the reason why this is important isn't because of a battle between you and your ex. The reason why this is important is because you need to help your child, okay? So that's really important. I get it that there's unjust things. The court system sucks. People suck. People are lying about you and other people are believing it. But the most important thing here is so that you can get parenting time with your child to prevent the harm that is inevitable that will come the more they are alienated from you, meaning the more they are turned against you, the more they believe different lies about you. This is why it's so bad to shame or talk trash on or whatever it is to blacklist the other parent. Just do not do that because it causes massive damage. Now, in this whole thing, how do we get that parenting time? If we're familiar with the judges in our county, if we've gone down to the county courthouse, if we start talking to lawyers who have dealt with cases that have parental alienation, and we do our proper research. Remember those consultations with different attorneys, they could be free. You might even pay for them, but it'll be a good $100, $200, $300 for whatever you pay if you're prepared in it. And if you go down to the county courthouse, which is for free and open to the public, although I heard, thank you for the comment out here, that in Vermont it is not open to the public. But if we start doing research on this, we can know exactly how our judge is going to rule on in these different disputes. And I guarantee you, in 10 to 15 cases, you're going to see a massive spectrum of examples of parents who have similar problems as you, including parental alienation. We can start to learn how judges are going to rule on this. And remember, if custody or if visitation time, parenting time, is our biggest defense against this at first, that's our main goal. So if we go in through it through the parental alienation angle and talk about that, great. If we go in through it with how good of a dad I am, and here's all the times I've been to the doctor, and here's all the times I go to the school, and I want to be more involved in these ways, there's that. If it means that there's dirty laundry against her, and in that dirty laundry, you can point out ways where her parenting time should be diminished for the safety of the child, not just because you're pissed off, then we go in it that way. But we have to be able to do that. And I'm going to tell you that this is possible. You need to learn how to organize this. So if you can go in to the court and get more parenting time, even though you can't prove that parental alienation is happening, that's still a win. Now, if you can go into the court and determine that parental alienation is happening and the judge recognizes it, that's better. Why? Because there's going to be rulings on that. There's going to be different judgments on that. And then there's going to be ways that you could find her in contempt if she fails to do those precautionary measures or parenting classes or whatever it is that they ask her to do to help with her problem of alienating you. So these things are really important. You've got to learn the system in this. However, this brings us to a bigger case. If you know my story, I was alienated from my kids for 5 years. I had false abuse charges. I had one of the worst cases. And actually, I can't really say that now because I work with guys. I had a terrible case. It's terrible. But now guys hire me with things which are even worse, which was hard to imagine. Lost my kids for 5 years, had them taken away. The reintegration process is just difficult. And so we have to understand that if parental alienation is happening to our child, we need to offer the best possible ecosystem for that child. Now, this doesn't guarantee that that child is going to have mental illness or whatever, but it guarantees that those statistics are going to be much higher. And I mean, it's horrible. That's like saying repeatedly physically abusing a child for years of their childhood and expect them just to be normal, like a roll of the dice. Maybe they might, it's not guaranteed that they're going to have problems from this, but it is guaranteed that the statistics go way up. We need to be there for our kids. We need to understand that our lives need to be strong and we need to be able to provide for them. We need to be able to be there for them mentally and emotionally and not present the same instability that they're getting. Now, as fathers, this is important because a lot of times fathers are so disenfranchised with this that they feel that they're already destroyed. So you might be financially ruined, you might be mentally ruined in some ways, you might be emotionally ruined, but you have to understand that your child doesn't need you to be rich. You need you to be rich, and maybe your future child needs you to be rich, but your child doesn't need for you to be rich. It doesn't need for you to be the alpha dude. It doesn't need for you to be any of these different things that are the reactions to our pain as men as we go through this. Your child, if your child is being parentally alienated, needs a father that can be there for them, that can listen to them, that can have the space for them, that can not play both sides or not play the other parent against one another. Your child doesn't need you to talk trash on their mother. Your child doesn't need you to have to force or enforce the standard of hating another parent. Your child needs you to be there so that you could have time with them. And this is one of the hardest things because when you're being trash talked on, when you're being drugged through the gutter, when your reputation is being ruined, and most of all to that child, guess what happens? You want to do the same thing back. And you can't. This is one of the hardest things. Your child is also going to need help as we come around. As that child gets older, they might need therapy. Well, one of the things about child therapy or even adolescent therapy is they're probably going to need it again later on in life, and it's not only going to help them, and it's very beneficial, but it's one of the gateways to something that will help them much later in life. So if the door is open to therapy at a younger age, it can help them at a later age. And these things are super important, so you need to be able to have the stability for that. It is vital for you as a parent to understand how important this is. Parental alienation is a form of child abuse, whether or not the courts see that. You need to, for your relationship with your child, fight this in any way possible. The first step in fighting this is going to be to get more parenting time. Do not talk trash on the mother. Do not involve your child in the court case. Do not give any more stress to them because it will affect them in huge ways. Parental alienation, meaning sabotaging or trash talking or harming the relationship between a child and the other parent, and in this case it's happening to you, causes massive problems. And some of the same problems, if not all of them, is repeated physical or sexual abuse throughout that child's childhood. This is terrible. It is a toxic form of mental abuse, and you need to stop it. Please listen to me carefully on this. And if you're going through this, check out my groups. We talk about this almost 7 days a week. We have a 24/7 support system. We have over 30 hours of calls a week where other dads can work through this with you, and it will save you a ton of money on your court case. It'll save you minimum $10,000 on your court case if you sign up for our groups. And that is equated by the national average of different types of court cases and compared to the court cases that men come in through that. Meaning if it's a high conflict divorce, it'll cost you $40,000 to $60,000. In our case, we'll get it done in 25, something like this. But if there's less conflict, it's less. And if you're representing yourself, we're going to help you all through the way. Talk to you guys soon. This is an important matter. And stay strong, men. Stay alive, stay strong, stay dads.